Welcome to the Marketing Remix, presented by Red Door Interactive. I'm Reed Carr, CEO of Red Door Interactive. Our show is the senior level marketer's resource for navigating our ever-evolving landscape. In each episode, in about 20 minutes, experts from different marketing disciplines representing different buyer touchpoints tackle one important marketing topic. Then, what do you need to know, and how does it affect the buyer? All right, we're here to talk about media transparency. Show me the money. The brand safety storm that raged throughout most of 2017 highlighted how little many advertisers know about their media investments. While some of this is due to downright shady behavior, things like display ad fraud, agency kickbacks, etc., the core issue is a lack of fundamental transparency between advertisers and their marketing departments. With advertisers wondering where their money is going and whose interests are being represented. What steps does Red Door take to ensure we are fully transparent with the media clients that we represent? We talk about this too. It's Red Door as a representative part. This is what the perspective we can share. But who we have here to speak on our behalf here is Emily Spears. She's the paid media manager of display and social at Red Door Interactive. And then Lauren Curtin, a business manager who really represents the client's perspective here. So really excited to have you guys. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks.
Absolutely. All right. So Lauren, give me a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so been at Red Door for about almost 6 months now, but prior to that, spent most of my career actually in the paid media world. So that is where my background and expertise has lied to date, and excited to have a little bit of a hand in that at Red Door, as well as kind of helping oversight in terms of client expectations, as well as internal team goals and making sure we're all working together through partnerships.
Yeah, that's why it's a good contributor to this one. And then Emily, a little bit about your background, please.
So I've been at Red Door for almost 2 years and help provide the strategy for which media platforms would be best suited for the client's budget and to reach the client's goals. So advise on campaign setup, audience targeting, placement targeting, and optimize in order to reach those goals. And obviously, I'll have a lot of help from other teams like the strategic planning team, and work closely with Lauren and business managers at Red Door as well.
Oh, yeah. It's a team effort. Nothing gets done without the we.
Always.
That's right. So, Lauren, you're representing from a client's perspective, and you have a perfect background for this, obviously, with the media side of things. But as it relates to the clients that we're dealing with, and again, agencies more broadly and their clients broadly, tell us a little bit about the client's perspective right now as it relates to what's going on in media and their concerns.
Yeah, I think one of the big things that's consistently a learning with media from, the conversations we have with clients is it's a very complex space and there's a lot to know within it. So just kind of really setting that expectation right off the bat that, it's going to be a little bit of communication nonstop, always helping answer questions, be ready to hop on the phone and really be transparent to the theme of this about exactly what is going into the media planning process and exactly what that's going to look like, and ladder back to any specific KPIs or goals that our clients might have. So just from the foundation, setting those realistic expectations, making sure they have the full understanding of what value Red Door is going to be able to provide to them through our expertise, as well as just really having that hand and making sure we fully understand what their needs are and being able to deliver on those.
Okay. So then, Emily, from the media side of things, then how are we fulfilling on those, or how are agencies fulfilling on those then with sharing that data back to clients?
Yeah, I think that the biggest and the simplest thing to do first off is just to make sure that everyone has access to the platforms themselves, or at the very least have a reporting dashboard to see spend and performance. And I think that goes a long way to build trust and to hold everyone accountable. So here at Red Door, all of our clients have access, obviously, to their own AdWords and Facebook account, but they have logins and they can see everything. They can see not just spend and performance, but targeting, keywords, geo-targeting, everything. So I think it's important that brands retain that confidence running their digital spend, and in cases where there's not necessarily a login, just provide frequent communication and updates as much as possible so that they have that that control over their spend.
Okay. So that a lot of that is then ongoing visibility, and that's a critical component. One thing that I also saw, the World Federation of Advertisers found that more than 70% of advertisers have changed their media contracts in the last year by adding specific clauses to clarify contentious aspects such as rebate, data ownership. So, I mean, I guess for both of you, but from the client standpoint, Lauren, what's the contract conversation like? Is any of that changing now from client's perspective?
Yeah, I think there's, just a lot in terms of just even the foundational elements of how we're buying, what type of metrics we're going to be buying on, so that clients fully understand, if I'm buying on a CPM versus a CPC, whatever it may be, that they fully understand exactly what that means for them, and that it's going to deliver on their dollar that the best way possible and as efficiently as possible. So just really making sure that understanding is set and kind of written in the initial conversations, and having that conversation up front just to really, set the expectation across the board.
Yeah. Another thing too, that 89% of advertisers limit or plan to limit spend in ad networks that are not independently verified. Emily, talk a little bit then on maybe contractually what's happening between agency and then the media properties. How are things changing on that side?
Yeah, definitely. I think that just first and foremost, that agencies should involve and educate clients on the vendors and the partners that they're selecting, and the process that they go through to choose those partners, because there's hundreds of programmatic display and video and mobile vendors in the space, and more coming on board all the time. And I think it's important for the agency to communicate the rationale for why they picked a specific partner. For example, did we pick that partner because they have a relationship, or obviously there's the kickbacks or other incentives that people are worried about, or did the agency potentially own that platform that they're recommending? So as a client, I would be very cautious as to whose interests are being represented if an agency is choosing a platform that they own. So here at Red Door, our philosophy is to test vendors against each other and then run with the top performer. So the initial selection, if there is an instance where you haven't tested that you haven't been in a situation where you can test that partner yet, then our decision is based on how well we've seen that partner perform in the past. So I think just having the decision based completely on performance and being able to back that up is really important.
Yeah, I mean, performance is obviously probably the most critical component of all this stuff. One thing that may be obscured though in performance, I would think, would be some of the kickbacks that might be happening in the background or something like that. One, actually, can we, and it comes from a couple different perspectives here, different sides, but define kickbacks. I mean, I know what it sounds like, obviously, but I'd love to tell our audience, what do these kickbacks look like? What can they look like?
They can look like anything from gifts, or they can be discounts that the agency is getting that the client isn't getting, discounts that the client's getting. And the gifts can range from dinner to drinks to, presents. Yeah, it really varies.
Yeah, I thought that's why we got into media in the first place, the dinners and the drinks. So, Lauren, from the client's perspective, how do you have that conversation? How is that conversation happening, or should it happen if you were on the client side specifically?
Yeah, I think, one of the critical parts, back to what Emily was saying, is really making sure that our clients feel confident in who we're selecting and understand the exact rationale behind why we chose them. That's why we have our experts like Emily working on this every day of their lives, is because they meet with hundreds of different types of vendors across different channels and platforms, and really have that holistic understanding of, okay, for our CPG client versus our financial clients, what's going to work better for each of those guys across all these people we've met with and know. And, a lot of things go into that, everything from the type of reporting they offer, the efficiencies they offer, the type of ad placements, et cetera. So just having those conversations from the beginning and really letting our clients feel like they're involved and a part of our process, let them almost feel in on, every step of the way, is critical, just to, not feel like at any point they're left in the dark, and just have the say in where their dollar is being spent is crucial.
Yeah. I think it's important for certainly listeners to recognize, or anybody, it means that it's not like we're eliminating all fun either. I mean, I think sometimes learning about those things do happen over dinners and drinks, or they bring in muffins and we talk about something. So, I mean, I don't think it's realistic to eliminate that completely. But on the other hand, there definitely are some things that have been happening. And I think a lot of folks have been exposed for doing some fairly nefarious things to different ends of that spectrum. But generally, I mean, Emily, maybe on your side a little bit is, what are those things that we are looking for from our media providers on the up and up? I mean, we talked, Lauren's talking about reporting or some of these things. What are the kind of the measures that might be beyond the ad performance, those nuanced things that I think are more innovative that we find are necessary that media providers have?
Yeah, I think that particularly when it comes to programmatic vendors, we try to use vendors that are transparent with their pricing model and ideally even have a dynamic CPM. So one of the questions that I've been asking more and more vendors lately is to be more transparent and let us know exactly when they have, say, for example, a $5 CPM, what percentage of that CPM is actually going to the publisher, what percentage is going to third-party data fees, what percentage is going to a platform fee. We know that there's fees baked into that CPM. We know that they obviously there's a margin of some sort. And if they're not telling you what that is, then I think that's a pretty bad sign. So ideally, we like to choose vendors that also have, like I mentioned before, a dynamic model, so that, for example, if an impression or 1,000 impressions actually cost $2, then we're paying $2 plus a 15% fee. So that CPM is actually $2.30 rather than all the time paying that $5, $6 CPM, where that $3 or $4 is just going to go straight to the vendor's margin. So I think that's something that is not always communicated, because the more and more I've asked these vendors, they'll say things like, wow, nobody's ever asked me that before. And it's definitely really surprising. And as long as, everyone is always going to have a fee. So it's just important to know what those are. And that's usually how we're basing our decisions from a vendor. Of course, not every single vendor is going to tell us that. And so you kind of have to weigh that option and definitely communicate that to the client. So if they're not telling us the fees, then you kind of have to weigh, is it, would you rather work with them because there's not anything else that we can work with as an alternative? Or, is that really important and should we find someone else?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's where you're saying basically transparency is paramount, because at least we know then how to assess one from another. Because I don't think we're trying to expect anybody to not make money. I mean, we know that they need to. How they do it, as long as we're clear on it together, then that's what's important.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, beyond even the, how that CPM model is broken out, like Emily alluded to, something else that's important to consider is, okay, if you have that and the efficiencies are great, it's broken out very clearly and transparently for us and the clients, that's awesome. But at the same time, with a partner, like a lot of programmatic partners, something that is also a value and oftentimes does come up in a lot of conversation is, okay, awesome, but where are we running? Right. And so really having that full understanding of, here's your site list, here's where we've been running, here's at least a sample site list, more so than just we're running across news and entertainment, because that could mean a million different things to a million different people, and that doesn't necessarily mean a site's getting traffic to it. So just also, taking that element into consideration, I think, is a very important part of how we look at, the transparency from partners as well. Yeah.
I mean, brand integrity, right? You don't want to show up against the wrong thing. And so if we don't know specifically where they could show up, it's a lot harder to police that and make sure that, because that's another thing that's so important about this. So much of the transparency conversation has been around the dollars and cents of it all. But there's a lot more to it. And Emily, what are some of those things that some of these marketers need to be thinking about?
Yeah, I think that not only in the selection process that we have already kind of talked through, I think that the next stage would be on the reporting process and just making sure that the agency is reporting on the right metrics, because sometimes you see things like, hey, impressions went up 10% month over month. And that's not really an important metric because spend increased 10% month over month. So it's more important to look at the rates and the cost pers of a certain metric. So, for example, it's more helpful to say something like the cost per completed view decreased or increased, or the complete video completion rate increased or decreased, rather than just the amount. And so I just think that educating clients on the right questions to ask and the right metrics to look for is another way to really combat that as well.
Yeah. So what, Lauren, then, as we sit down and we're educating a client, because, we look at them going through kind of this crawl, walk, run phase sometimes as they are increasing spend, certainly in digital, but beyond that, even into traditional. But as we're moving through this process, I mean, what are some tips from your standpoint that they need to be asking? Because so many of these marketers have gone from purely traditional, and now they've moved to digital. Now they're maybe looking at kind of a balance of both. They're clearly different. I mean, in terms of what this transparency looks like, how do you take a client through that process?
Yeah, I think from the start, it's very much a partnership process that, they're not always going to know every question to ask, and Red Door might not always know every question to ask as it relates back to their business. So really just having those open conversations, and I think starting from the beginning of what is your ultimate goal here at the end of the day? What are you looking to achieve through our marketing efforts? And then from there saying, okay, you're looking to generate new leads. Based off of that, we're going to recommend that you look into X, Y, and Z, and just kind of really guide those questions and just have that open line of communication throughout everything.
Far more complex than it seems. I mean, I think it's, a lot of times when you get into more leads and it's like, well, from a particular audience, or we're merging to a new business unit or something like that. So, I mean, that's one of the challenges.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's definitely something, to your point, audiences, for example, is a huge area to look at, because how each different audience, how your millennial audience versus your 65, 55 plus audience, the way they engage with different brands is going to be very different, and they're going to approach things in very unique and different ways, and they have different ways of consuming media. So definitely have to, at the fundamental level, along with understanding goals, also understanding who your audience is and how you want to reach them and effectively reach them on the platforms that you're running across. So just making sure that any specific questions you have, you're fully understanding those audiences, fully understanding the goals, and then also leveraging our internal teams. And we all, constantly are working together to make sure we're asking each other these questions to really help educate clients while they also educate us on their businesses.
Okay. Well, so where's a case in which you think transparency, certainly in your history or even hypothetically, directly influenced a client relationship?
I can think of a time, actually, pretty recently. We were working with a client to help them, and it kind of also goes back to that CPM black box and knowing what's more into that CPM. But we were working with them and just talking about their other agency that they were working with, and we saw that they were giving a really low percentage of media management fees, which is great. But all of the partners that they had chosen to work with for their display and video and mobile campaigns were all platforms that they owned, and were all platforms that we saw that they were giving them higher CPMs than we typically see in the industry. Mm-hmm. And so it kind of helped show that although what might be under the line item of media management, that there might be other ways that agency is making money through those CPMs. And I'm not saying that all agencies that own a platform and run campaigns on that platform have hidden margins, but it's definitely important to ask about that. Yeah. So, that I think that just really opened their eyes to that and see that sometimes at some agencies, the media management fees aren't all that they're really paying for.
Yeah. So, I mean, and that's actually a pretty common, unfortunately, probably common, but suspicious practice, is basically owning the whole supply chain or value chain in between, the agency relationship, the media buying relationship, and the publisher and platform and ad tech. And you see certainly with a lot of the holding companies, they own a lot of that overall ecosystem. I think what you're talking about then, and correct me if I'm wrong, is kind of taking a piece of all of it kind of through one ownership mm-hmm. group.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it's kind of obscured.
Yeah, because then you wonder, did they choose that platform to run those campaigns on because they tested all these other partners and they found that one performed the best, or are they choosing that platform because they're making money off of it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's certainly a stone to turn over and explore. And like you said, it's not always the case, but boy, it's probably pretty tempting for them to do it. So that makes sense.
Yeah, and I know from past client experiences, we've run into situations where things seem to be going great, and then all of a sudden you see performance not be near where they want it to be. It just kind of tanks, from the terms of what their ultimate goal of achieving at the end of the day was. And so it just puts us in a little bit of a tricky situation at that point, just to say, okay, here's what happened. Here's what we can learn from it. And then just having the transparency from that side of the things, at the end of the day, of whether it be fantastic performance or not the best, maybe poorer performance than anybody hoped for or essentially planned for, just having kind of that ongoing, hey, update, here's what's going on, and then taking that to leverage learnings across the board has really been a great way to, really make these relationships successful, and making sure that, back to what I was saying earlier, our clients feel like they're a part of our day-to-day happenings and almost feel like they are too part of the Red Door family, and just really feeling like they have the say at the end of the day of what's going on with their business.
Absolutely. Well, it is a team effort getting these kinds of results. So, Phil, thanks for joining this team, guys. It was really appreciated you having coming on board here and talking about media transparency. Lauren, Emily, thanks for joining, and we will catch you guys next time.
Thanks for having us.